Welcome to the Leadership is Female podcast. Emily Bloss. We are so thrilled to have you. Another Emily and Emily talking today. You are the Senior Brand Partnerships at Sponsorship United. Oh my gosh, let me edit this part. Blah, blah, blah. I'm tongue-tied.
All good.
Okay. It's Senior Brand Partnerships, right? Is that how you say your title? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Welcome to the Leadership is Female podcast. Emily Bloss, who is Senior Brand Partnerships at Sponsor United. Can you introduce yourself? Tell us who you are and what you do.
Yes, so excited to be here. So like you said, work at Sponsor United now over our brand partnerships and agency now as well, based in Houston, Texas.
So how did you get there? What is your origin story and growth through your career that led you to this position?
Yeah, so I was a user of Sponsor United at LSU. I worked for LSU Sports Properties for 12 years. Started as an intern there and worked my way up. And then I started using Sponsor United in my last few years there and just saw an incredible product that was leveling the playing field, I think, in the sports industry. And when there was an opportunity to jump on board, kind of seized that opportunity. It definitely was not something I thought I would do, but I just saw an opportunity to help brands that I had worked with for so many years in a unique capacity.
Yeah, well, let's go back to the LSU days. You grew your career at LSU. You're an LSU grad and you worked at LSU Sports. So you started as an AE in sales and service. And I want to ask you, what were the top 3 things you learned during this foundational time in your career?
Yeah, it's so hard to narrow it down, and I'll take a step back. I spent a lot of time on that campus. I even went to high school on LSU's campus. So I was on campus for 16 years, but I learned a lot. I started there as an intern. I was kind of in a point in my college career where I didn't know what I wanted to do. I even kind of dabbled in maybe being a teacher, which would have been a terrible career path for me. And I got this internship with LSU and fell in love with sports business. So I learned a lot. I think in my early days that work ethic and drive are going to take you really far. As an intern, I said yes to everything. I didn't care if I was working extra hours. It was a little bit of a grind, but I was having fun and learning so much. And I made so many friends within athletics doing it. Something else I feel like I learned pretty early in my career there, and I had such a supportive group of colleagues too. So it really allowed me to excel and continue to progress in my career. But one thing I learned pretty early on was speaking up for yourself, no matter where you are, what level you're at, kind of speaking up in a respectful way, but also a professional way as well. I think too many people early in their career kind of sit back. And after speaking up a couple times and it was well received, it's like, okay, I can make a difference here. So I think that's something I learned pretty early in my career. And then as I progressed at Sports Properties, and I wore lots of different hats over there, but I think in hindsight, looking back, if you're too comfortable with something, it's probably time to make a move, which is how I really went from the client services side of the business to sales. I think sales always interested me, but it really terrified me at the same time. So when I was kind of forced to make that jump and move to Houston and sell for LSU here, I realized, kind of looking back, okay, I knew I was really, really good at the client services side. It's probably time for me to do something new.
Yeah, I want to dig in real quick to number 2, speaking up for yourself, no matter what level you are at. This is something that's really challenging, I think, across the board for everyone. What tips do you have for getting the words out when it's time to stand up for yourself or share an idea?
It is challenging. And I think early in your career too, seeing people that are above you, especially when in athletics, I think about how many people are above me, whether it was the ADs, the associate ADs, they want someone that's early in their career to talk to them and share ideas, because you have a new, fresh perspective that maybe they don't have. I can remember specific examples of sitting in meetings that were terribly inefficient. We weren't getting anything done, and just coming up with an idea of how we could make these meetings a little bit more efficient so everybody felt like they were getting something out of it. So small little things along the way, but I think speaking up made a difference in the organization, and being more efficient.
You're so right that leaders want to hear from everyone on staff, including the newbies, because you bring in a new voice, a new perspective, and you were hired for a reason. So let's use that voice. So, okay, LSU is just a powerhouse SEC school. What were some of your favorite moments of living and working on campus?
There's so many moments in my experience and in my time there that I loved. I think easily my most favorite moment is the 2019 season when LSU just went on this incredible run and won the national championship. I mean, it's hard to top that. I don't think anybody knew that was going to happen at the beginning of the season. And at that point, I'd worked at LSU for a long time. We had been, we'd had really good days and we had really bad days and really bad seasons. So to kind of see all of that come to fruition was really, really exciting. And, being in college athletics, it's a little bit different than professional sports because it's such a passion play. People have a tie to the university. They went there. They've been fans their whole life. So it's one of those jobs you have to pinch yourself sometimes, because I would take clients on the field pregame and they would get to see, the band come out and all the pregame festivities that are just part of the culture at LSU that I did all the time and kind of took for granted. So on those really hard days, you had to pinch yourself and you could see it through the eyes of those fans. And then you kind of step back and you're like, okay, this is pretty cool. Not everybody gets to do this.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of that, fandom for LSU goes way beyond Baton Rouge. It's the whole state, and it's also Texas, which is why your job moved you to Houston to grow partnerships in Houston, Texas for LSU. What were the keys to capitalizing on a brand like that? That's really also a lifeblood when you work in sales.
Yeah, the fan base for LSU, it runs deep. I mean, the roots run deep in the state of Louisiana. I'm not originally from there. I moved there when I was in high school, and it was one of those things that you jumped on the bandwagon because it was so much fun to be a part of. So if you live in the state of Louisiana, you probably bleed purple and gold, which is incredible. And that goes into Texas as well. I moved to Houston. And the coolest thing about moving to Houston was I would drive around and I would see LSU bumper stickers, and I'd have to remember I'm not in Baton Rouge anymore. So the fandom, it runs really deep. And what's cool with connecting with a brand like that and being able to sell a brand like that is, again, it's such a passion play. So you're selling to another brand the opportunity to leverage their brand with something like LSU that people put their passion behind. So it was a really fun sell. It was so different from what I'm doing now, but it was exciting. And, even when LSU wasn't very good, I remember a season we lost to Troy and people are asking me if we were going to discount our rates, but people hang on to the passion of LSU and the pageantry of collegiate sports. So that's really what you were selling at the end of the day. So it was fun.
What was one of the biggest or most creative or most memorable sales that you had?
Oh gosh, I have to think about that.
Go in the Wayback Machine.
Yes, I know there's so many different sales. Everyone means a little bit something different to you. There's one that maybe wasn't your biggest one, but you had to go through 10 different spider webs to figure out how to make it happen. One of my favorites was one that I did with Gulf States Toyota. So they're one of the regional Toyota dealers that puts together a lot of their partnerships. And my boss told me, we've worked on this forever. We've never been able to get a deal done with them. We probably won't. And they're actually based in Houston. So I was cold calling. I would have a list that I would go through all of the time. And I got him on the phone one day and he was like, we've looked at LSU before. Unless you have something new to offer, I just don't think it's a fit. So I was like, we have so many new things to offer. If you just take a meeting with me, I promise we'll figure out something. So we went to the meeting and they needed something that was creative. They wanted us to create a memorable experience that they could attach their brand to with LSU, which we did. We created an entirely new sweepstakes with our baseball coach. Somebody was able to go on a fishing trip with him and a couple of people, and just something different. So that was probably one of my favorites because beginning to end, it was getting creative and not just selling a sign in the stadium, but coming up with a solution for the brand.
Yeah, that's such a great example from the moment you got the lead and they were basically like, good luck. No one's ever closed this. So you said challenge accepted and got the meeting and got the deal done. And that's a champion right there, Emily.
That's where I tend to dig in my heels. If somebody tells me I can't get it done, I'm like, no, I'm going to get it done. Just watch.
Yeah. So then your time at LSU came to an end, came to a sunset, and you made the move to sponsor United. You told us a little bit about that transition in your intro, that you fell in love with the product first and then decided to go work there. So what predicated that move for you from sports properties to sports tech?
It's really nothing I could have ever predicted. If you had told me 10 years ago you were going to move from, selling collegiate sports to sports tech, I would have had no idea what you were talking about. But I saw the opportunity to jump in with a company that was growing at a rapid pace. And the first time I saw Sponsor United, I was lucky enough to sit in on some of the demos to see if we thought it would be worth it. And the first time I saw it, I was like, how has no one thought of this before? This makes so much sense. So I saw an opportunity to get in as it was growing and also building out new verticals. So we started really heavy on the rights holder side, and then we're building out the brand side, which I feel like I had dealt with brands for so many years. And, there really wasn't that level playing field of what opportunities were available in a market. What are my competitors doing? What assets are available? So I saw an opportunity to kind of jump in and really change sports and change entertainment and how people are buying. So it's continuing to unfold, but when I was looking at the opportunity, I was like, oh, this is really cool. All of my skills translate from what I've done selling collegiate sports into this role. And I can also break into a new industry that I never would have expected that I would be interested in. So it's been a really cool transition.
Well, the old adage, you've got to grow, or no, the old adage, you have to go to grow, I think plays true for you here, where it was a new opportunity and it's really helped you to grow and expand. So tell us a little bit more about Sponsor United. When I was at the ACES, we bought on this tech and it was just so insightful, but many people might not know what it is. So share with us the high points and why sponsorship sellers should really consider this technology to level up their business.
Well, I love Level Up. I'm going to start using that in my pitches because I think that's great. But you know how people always ask, what did we do before Google? I think any sponsorship seller that has used Sponsor United says, well, what did we do before Sponsor United? Because it really takes so many different ways of prospecting and it puts it at your fingertips within a couple of seconds, a couple of minutes. I mean, at LSU, to prospect, we were going to games. When I moved to Houston, I went to every game in Houston and saw what brands were spending, whether it was the Texans, Astros. So I was doing my own prospecting there. And then you just go to LinkedIn and Google and try to find the right person. So it was a lot of manual steps that all of a sudden was just in one platform. So for the sponsorship sellers, a total game changer. And they'll ask themselves, how did I ever survive without this? And then from the brand perspective, I think it's powerful in leveling up in an entirely different way. So making them more efficient, so much smarter. In just a few seconds, you can break down the competitive landscape of what your competitors are doing, whether it's in sports or music festivals, influencers, being able to understand what they're doing, giving them a peek behind the curtain at assets with other properties. So when you're negotiating those deals, understanding what's available, and then also aggregating their own creative. I mean, we have boots on the ground in every market internationally. So we're taking pictures and it's all on the platform with what they're doing.
Game changer, you guys. I can't tell you enough that this isn't even like a sales pitch for Sponsor United. This is about interviewing Emily and her career and how she got to where she is today to lead you all forward. But this is a level up tool, 100%. It cuts down the workload just dramatically and gives you so many insights. And you always wish that there was like man, I wish I could get the lead list from, name a company in your town that's selling advertising. Like if I could just have their lead list, my job would be so much easier. Well, this is basically giving you the lead list, and you can have it all for yourself and all your sellers.
Anybody in sales has driven down the interstate and taken pictures of billboards that are spending in markets and prospecting. So we're doing all of that. It's great.
Yeah. And when we spoke previously, you mentioned startup mode. So what has been your biggest takeaways from working for a historic and successful sports institution like LSU? And then you're transitioning to work from home for essentially a startup.
Yeah, it's two very different roles. Luckily, I had some time to transition to working from home when I was working for LSU in Houston, because that is a transition in itself. If you're in an office every day and then you're going to kind of be a self-starter working from home, there is some transition in that. But it's somewhere like LSU, it's a pretty well-oiled machine. They've been doing this for quite some time. Yes, things change, processes change here and there, but overall, you know what to expect. When your games are, how things have run in previous years and what you want to tweak. So it's a little bit more of a well-oiled machine with some more predictability. I think what I took for granted or just didn't expect with a startup is just how fast-paced it is. I think everybody says that, but until you actually live it, like, wow, what I was doing 2 months ago, I might not even be doing today. So you have to be really quick to adapt. Things are constantly changing. So adaptability is huge, being able to think quickly on your feet. And then what's really cool about a startup that's a little bit different is, I know we talked a little bit about speaking up for yourself and, kind of calling out efficiencies when you can. In a startup, they're really taking all of that to heart. So we're trying things. We might fail half the time with processes we're trying, and they want to hear from everybody else what's going to make it better. So you feel like you're part of that greater good that is contributing to the startup and almost like a player on the team. I couldn't contribute to the success at LSU on the football field, but I feel like in a startup, you can kind of contribute to this success in a different way.
Yeah, those are great ways to look at it for sure. And sort of aligning what you want for that part of your career and your lifestyle with the right company. And when that match is made, it's success, I think, all around. There had to have been a couple of hurdles for you in your career. What's been the biggest hurdle you've had to overcome so far?
For sure. I think there's two that come to mind right off the bat. One big hurdle was moving to Houston and starting to sell. I'd never sold before. I'd been on the client services part of the business once the contract signed. I was really fulfilling those relationships throughout the rest of the client journey. But moving to Houston, I was by myself and trying to figure out how to sell in a market where the university wasn't in this market. So it was a little bit of a challenge. So I moved in 2016. I thought, oh, I'm moving to Houston. Oil and gas is going to be huge for me. And it was not a good time in that industry. So had to get really creative with who I was going after. And I learned so much from that hurdle, though, learning how to sell, kind of teaching myself a lot of those skills. But I mean, literally knocking on the door of anybody that went to LSU and asking them to meet with me to see who they could network me with that would make sense to tie back to a sponsorship with LSU. So I met a lot of interesting people at that point that have now transitioned to this new, my new career path. But that was definitely a big hurdle, but it was a successful one. I mean, I was able to take my little flag in Houston for LSU and grow it into a $1 million+ property basically in just a couple of years. So that's something I'm really proud of. Biggest hurdle, but probably my biggest accomplishment. And then the other hurdle I think of is coming back, and this translates to women and females, but coming back from maternity leave both times. I have 2 daughters. I have a 9-month-old and a 3-year-old. So one of my maternity leaves is pretty fresh, but both times, and being a woman, both roles I've been in, I was the first woman to go out on maternity leave within that group. So kind of the guinea pig there. And then also in sales. So going out on maternity leave in sales, it's tough. You come back, you don't just pick up your job where you left off. you have to build a totally new pipeline, and it takes a little while to get your groove back. So those have definitely been hurdles, but I wouldn't change the maternity leave and the time off I had for anything. But definitely takes a little while to get back in there and build up that pipeline.
Yeah, and I heard you say two things there that I want to sort of reiterate. The first was your growth through a new challenge. So even while working under the LSU flag, you had a huge opportunity for growth moving into a new market. And while it was tough, you really grew as an individual, as a seller, and as a leader, learning how to like carve your own path in this new city. And I think that's where we can find some of the biggest growth is when we're facing adversity. So I hope you all heard Emily's story and how she did it and how resilient she was to push through and resourceful in the area. And then the second piece was really about maternity leave. And again, hope you all listen to that, men and women, those with and without kids, because whether you have kids or not, you're going to be working with somebody who does and who does go out on maternity leave. And I had to I've got 3 kids and
Yeah.
I've had to tell people before, I can't believe I had to state it, that like I wasn't on vacation, right? They thought we took like this 3-month hiatus and just relaxed and then got to hop right back into our job when we got back to work. And it's really not a vacation. It's a very, very special time, but it's a lot of work. And it's also a really kind of stressful time away from your job, especially when you're in sales, as you stated with the pipeline, and jumping back in when you're back in the office can totally be difficult.
Yeah. And I think when you jump back in too, you're not just adjusting to going back to work and filling that pipeline and doing or picking up your role, no matter what your role is, but you're also adjusting to a new home life and juggling that as well. So, going from 0 to 1, you're juggling just having a child in your house, and then going from 1 to 2, like, okay, I'm juggling 2 and a full-time job. So it's definitely worth it, but it takes a little getting used to.
Yeah, 100%. So have grace with everybody, whether you're the one coming back or you're the one welcoming a teammate or a leader back to the organization after maternity leave. A little bit of grace goes a very, very long way.
Yeah. And I think, those employers that take care of their employees, that get that time, and when they come back, they support them. Those employees are going to be better employees because they have a different purpose now, and they have to be more efficient and more strategic with their time because it's not just them. So
100%. Those are incredible points. And want to talk a little bit more about Houston. So you live in Houston. You and I actually met a couple of years ago. We moved to Houston at the same time in 2016, and we met through Wise. How has Wise Houston helped you grow in your career? And for those of you who are not familiar or don't have a chapter in your city, it's Women in Sports and Events.
Wise has been amazing. One of the best things I think I ever did just for my personal career, if that makes sense. But when I first moved here, I was begging anybody to meet with me that went to LSU. And one of those people happened to be Gretchen Shear, who's now president of business operations at the Rockets, been there forever, but she swam for LSU. So I begged her to have coffee with me, not thinking it would have anything to do with Wise, but just wanted to understand the market, the landscape, who I should reach out to, tell her I'm here. And the first thing she said was, you really should join Wise. And Wise had just started in Houston around 2016. And I've made so many friends, so many connections that I wouldn't have otherwise. And, at the time I was working by myself in Houston. So I was working from home. So it was a great way to just get out and meet new people, have a fresh perspective of what's going on within Houston. And I think what's opened my eyes throughout the years is how important it is to help other women and support other women. And I've seen it happen firsthand. I'm actually I'm on a committee with Wise Within, which we handle all of the mentoring programs. So every year we do matches, we match mentees with mentors. And it's a really cool process to see. I've been a mentee and a mentor. It's a cool process to see. And what you've seen after several rounds of this is women supporting women. So a mentor might hire her mentee or vice versa. And I was at a WISE event last night, and there was someone there that I've known for a while, and they're hiring a bunch of new positions. And I was thinking about a couple of people that I know have had some movement in the industry that would be really good for the position she had open. So it's all about that women supporting women. Just, it's been an incredible organization. I've met some incredible people there. And there's some really powerful women in sports and events in that organization that I look up to. So I mentioned Gretchen. I mean, Gretchen has so much on her plate, but she's also a mom. So understanding that she has that balance too. And when I think I have a busy day, it hasn't been nearly as busy as Gretchen. So some really cool women that are inspirational to look up to.
Totally agree. And I joined Wise Houston and met some great people. And my mentor from afar, Janice Burke at Harris County Houston Sports Authority, she's the same, like that Gretchen is to you. Janice has 4 kids who are now adults, and now she's a grandma, and she's still running HCHSA. She's got a husband, and just this, I don't know how, she must not sleep, but she's like one of the most thoughtful leaders. The way she balances her like care for her employees, but also her demand for excellence is so well balanced. I've never seen anybody else do it like that. And that's who you have access to when you join these types of groups. And then, like, further to your point, they want to help you once you get to know them, or you get to help them, like in your case where you've got some people you can refer to some open positions. So if you guys don't know it, check it out. Wise might just have a chapter in your city.
And I think WISE is actually starting to do more national things in scope for the ones that don't have WISE in their city. I think they're doing more virtual. So definitely worth looking into.
Yeah. Well, now that you've been in Houston for 8 years, no, 6 years, 6 years.
Yeah.
What do you love about Houston, and what's the best place to eat?
Gosh, I love Houston so much. I'm a native Louisiana girl is what I say, but I love the city of Houston. There's always something going on. My biggest surprise in moving here was how good the food is. And I mean, it's a melting pot of all different kinds of cultures. So a lot of great restaurants, good things are always popping up. Speaking of food, my favorite go-to restaurant since I moved here is probably Cultivar in the Heights. You can have pizza, wine, pasta, cool atmosphere. There's a garden in the back where you could sit and have a drink. So I don't know what else you could ask for out of a restaurant, but it's got a really cool laid back vibe.
Yeah, I agree on that point. Also, Houston's food scene is so good. And I know this is a chain now, but I almost wore my Torchy's Tacos t-shirt for this interview because I miss that place so much. There was one in the Woodlands not too far from where we lived, and I was there like once a week at least.
They're expanding everywhere now too.
They are. Fingers crossed. Maybe they'll come to Reno.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a great place with so much going on, and food and great people. So, all right.
I didn't mention the people, but the people are incredible and they're so welcoming. You have so many native Houstonians here, but so many other transplants that have ended up here, and they just kind of welcome everybody. It's very cool.
They do. The natives are not exclusionary to everybody who moves in, because all the people moving in are what's continuing to fuel the economy and the growth of that amazing city. And I think that vision is really cool, and what makes Houston just a welcoming place to be.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, final 4 questions. Here we go.
All right.
What's your best piece of advice for women looking to level up in their career?
My biggest piece of advice, I think I'd have to say, this is going to sound kind of cliche, but I'm going to have to say, staying true to yourself and your core values. I think as soon as you're in a role that feels a little bit unnatural to you, a little bit against the grain, you have to ask yourself, is this the right place for me? Is this the right spot? And I think you have to go with your gut. I've worked with people that have been in sales, women in sales, and I could just tell through conversations, it was something that it just almost didn't agree with them. Like they had a lot of really, really great skills, but it wasn't bringing out the best in them. So I think when you feel that way, you have to go with your gut and figure out, okay, here are my skills. Here are the things that bring me joy. Where would I best be suited?
Yeah. And I think that's an ongoing discussion with yourself. Like
Yeah.
who you were when you entered that job is not going to be who you are in a few years or sometimes a few months if you have something major happen in your life. So that constant evaluation and staying true to yourself is an excellent piece of advice.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's part of what led me to eventually leaving LSU because I was traveling in for all of the home games. And I had at the time a less than 2-year-old. And we were taking her on the road, 8 weekends out of the fall. So I just knew at some point that wasn't going to be sustainable for our family. And there was going to have to be some changes.
So where are you traveling to next? One of the things I miss about Houston was the airport, believe it or not.
You get to decide which one works best.
Yeah, first of all, there's two.
Yeah.
And you can get so many places on just one plane. So where are you traveling to next?
I'm actually excited that I have something on the books. My husband and I are going to California and in September, late September, and we are going to do Sonoma wine country and then go over to Big Sur for a couple days as well. So 6 days with no kids is going to be such a treat.
Wow, you'll be in my neck of the woods.
I know, we'll be pretty close.
Yeah. Oh, that'll be amazing. That's a big step to leave the kids.
I know it takes a village, like everybody says. So
Yeah.
thankfully my parents are going to come in and spend some time with their grandkids, but those things are important too. I think when it comes to balance, we both work really hard. He's so supportive in everything that I do. But we have to take time to ourselves because you get caught up in the hustle and bustle of the weeks. And you go from working to bath time, dinner, bedtime. Sometimes you're plugging in late at night. So being able to take that time, whether it's date nights or a trip, is really important.
Yes. It's so true. And I'm happy you brought that up again, because I was recently talking about that on the podcast, because that's one of my goals for 2022. I had to make it very intentional to spend more time with my husband because it was work and kids, and then there's no time left in the day. So to your point, it takes a village.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. What's your pump up song?
This is a twofold question, I think. So depends on what part of the day it is. If it's the weekend or the weekday. But after a few drinks, my go-tos have always been Michael Jackson or a good Whitney Houston ballad. That's been probably true since I was really, really little. My dad has videos of me dancing to Michael Jackson. And then I actually told a colleague of mine this week. I was trying to get through some prospect outreach and I was like, I just really need to psych myself out. I got to plug through some of this for the next 2 hours. So I put in my headphones and I told her, I said, Lizzo, I think might be my new go-to. I was on fire, just firing things out in the best mood. So Lizzo is my new pump up girl.
Yeah, she kind of like snuck onto my playlist. And then I realized that I was favoriting and then like replaying the song. So
that's what happened to me. And I took the Lizzo Peloton ride the other day and I was like, okay, I have to go see Lizzo now.
Oh, I haven't done it yet. That reminds me.
Oh, you need to do it. It's good.
Yeah, add that one to the list. All right. And then finally, our last question is, what is your favorite quote?
I have no idea where this originated. One of my old bosses used to always say this, and I carry it with me through life and through job too. But the only thing I remind myself this daily, the only thing you can control is your attitude and your activity. So I think that kind of goes through different facets of life. Definitely hones in on my sales role. You can't control when people buy, how they're going to buy, if it's going to happen. But if you have a good attitude and you're keeping your activity up, The rest kind of all falls into place and takes care of itself. And then I have one that's not really a quote, but I always like to, I manage this group that we teach cold calling to, and they're kind of our BDR roles. But one thing I always like to leave them with is, nobody's going to remember half of what you said, but they're going to remember the way you made them feel. So I also try to take that when I'm doing sales pitches, just talking to somebody. I think understanding that they're not going to remember half of what I said or half of what I pitched them, but they're going to remember how they felt when they were having a conversation with me. So that's another little piece I try to carry with me. I was head of rush for my sorority, and someone once told me that life is a rush party, and that kind of holds true as well. So a couple little ones there.
So good. Emily, it has been amazing connecting with you. Thank you for sharing so much advice for us today on the Leadership is Female podcast.
Thanks, Emily.